Good evening, and welcome back to YBC Revolt Talk, where tonight we are discussing what's on your mind, the importance of mental health. I am Tanya Dunbar, and we invite you to please follow, and share all of our social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at YBC Revolt. We are going to have a great night tonight. And tonight I have joining me YBC members Rachel Kaufman and Michon Cicero.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, y'all. How's it going?
Good.
Everybody's staying warm and stuff because, this weather has been crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it's doing a little, I don't know what we want to call it. It's like hot one day and then it's 40 or 30 degrees outside the next day. It's ridiculous. But at any rate, say what, Michon?
It's like a lottery outside.
Right. You're right. Let's see what happens from day to day. Yeah. Take your bets, right? But hopefully everyone is continuing to stay safe and stay well and stay healthy, despite the weather and despite the fact that we're still living in the middle of a pandemic. So hopefully everyone's wearing their mask and being as safe as possible. Our show tonight is sponsored by The Factory 10, a mother-daughter owned and operated business where we are focused on making your visions a reality, one design at a time. I happen to be the mother of the owner of that and part half of that ownership. So we are happy and glad to sponsor tonight's YBC Revolt Talk. But before we jump into tonight's show, let's get started with Black Health Trivia. Okay, so y'all know I'm always extra, right? So I got to go find my little Jeopardy music. So just give me a second. Rachel, no judgment. Just relax over there. Okay? Because I already know how y'all do. Okay, so our question tonight for the viewers is, in the African American community, children are less likely diagnosed and evaluated and treated with this disorder in comparison to white children. So let me read that one more time. In the African American community, children are less likely diagnosed, evaluated, and treated with this disorder in comparison to white children. So let me drop my theme music. Y'all put y'all answers in. Oh, wait.
This is a tough one this time.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Okay.
Okay, we don't have any answers yet, so we're going to come back. We will circle back to our Black Health Trivia at the end as more people tune in and see if somebody gets the answer. And then we have our colleague over here, Eunice, right? She's got to be so extra about the weather, y'all. Meanwhile, she's wearing hoodies in 60-degree weather, but we won't talk about that tonight on tonight's show either. We'll wait till next time when she's here and she can defend herself. So anyway, let's jump into our talk tonight. Rachel, do you want to introduce our special guest?
Yes. So talking about our episode today, What's on Your Mind, we are joined by a special guest, and definitely special to me, my aunt, Dr. Manita Elzy. Dr. Elzy is a licensed psychotherapist, and she has over 24 years of experience treating children, adults, individuals, couples, families, group settings. Definitely me, as I like to call her sometimes and say, I need you to therapize me. She is the one. She specializes in depression, anxiety, trauma, and adjustment orders. Welcome. So, a little backstory on Dr. Manita Elzy. She does not believe in a one-size-fits-all approach to therapy. So therefore, she tailors her treatment approach to the unique needs and personalities of each of her clients. And it's a system that she uses that is more of an integrative therapeutic treatment approach. In addition to being a certified clinical trauma professional, she is also certified in Ericksonian hypnotherapy solution focused therapy. That was a mouthful, but don't worry, she's going to explain that. And eye movement integration therapy. She has a doctorate in couple and family therapy and a master's in social work. She also has extensive training in other modalities such as cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness therapy, strategic family and family systems therapy, among other strategies. And you do hypnotherapy too. You hypnotized me that time. I didn't have Taco Bell for once. Anyway, Dr. Elsie is currently in private practice based in South Carolina. So please join me, all YBC family, in welcoming my aunt and personal therapist from time to time, Dr. Manita Elsie.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Elsie, we're so glad to have you.
Yes.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So I guess kicking everything off, because that was kind of a mouthful, and we're also talking about something that's a little taboo in the Black community itself, mental health. So could we kind of start off with you explaining to all of us what exactly is mental health when we use that term?
Well, mental health basically is the ability that a person has to regulate their thoughts and their feelings and their behaviors as they negotiate life day to day.
Okay. And then when we talk about that, what type of mental health services are you thinking when you think of the Black community and what we might be lacking in?
Well, we're definitely lacking in psychoeducation. I think that because there are so many taboos about therapy in the African American community, if we facilitated a way to get the message out to explain exactly what therapy is, who can benefit from it, what it entails, and the types of issues that can be addressed that aren't all severe life trauma related issues, that more people would be inclined to use the service.
And do you think part of that has to do with the kind of stigma? I think a lot of, especially older millennials, you kind of grew up with that saying in your family, like kind of what happens here stays here. Don't go spreading our family business out to other people. So what would you kind of say, or what advice would you give to people that kind of have that mentality, not thinking that mental health is something different?
Well, I would let them know that what is said in the room with the therapist stays in the room, that everything is confidential unless you tell them that you're going to harm yourself or you're going to harm someone else. Everything you tell them stays there. It's not shared with anyone. So I would hope that would give them a little peace, a little satisfaction to know that it's safe in that environment.
Okay. And you talked about within the community some of the services that can be provided. So is all type of mental health what we think of when we watch certain TV shows or movies where you see the person laying on a proverbial couch or holding a pillow and speaking to someone, and it's like that one-to-one? Or does it often take place in different forms just depending on the type of services you need?
Well, that form where they're laying on the sofa, which is traditional psychoanalysis, rarely happens anymore. I'm sure it does. There are therapists who still use that. There are a lot of there's so many evidence-based therapeutical approaches. You have to find the ones that resonate with you, that you know can benefit the client. There's some specific to whatever your condition is or your issue is that you're bringing to the table. So you want to be proficient in those specific to the needs of your client. But talk therapy, it's basically talk therapy with adults where you're sitting across from each other and you're having dialogue. But there are other forms used too, like there might be art therapy, there might be music therapy, especially with children. The same treatment that you use for adults, you can use with children, but you have to change the way you implement it. It has to be modeled differently. So you play a lot of games with them, or you do activities, and help them to express themselves in ways that aren't verbal, because they don't necessarily have the language to tell you what they're thinking and what they're feeling, but they can demonstrate it through play. So you can see it with the manipulation of the toys or the dolls, or even what they draw in a picture. And then you can process that with them.
Yeah, that is a very interesting point. And I know, coming from the Black community, because it's so taboo, I think a lot of times we may come across people who are, dealing with these mental issues, and we may not be aware, right? Or we don't know how to we can't diagnose them. So is there like common signs, like maybe 5 or so signs that us, dealing with, our loved ones on a daily basis that we could, identify, to maybe then kind of, help them get help?
Sure. If they are sleeping excessively or not sleeping hardly at all, if they're eating way more than they typically eat, or they're barely eating at all, if they are no longer finding joy or pleasure in things that they typically used to enjoy doing, if they have excessive worry, have panic attacks, you know, to the extreme, of course, if they are hallucinating or are delusional in their thinking, and certainly if they're suicidal or talking about, death and dying, whether they actually say they plan to kill themselves or not, if they're even talking in that direction, you want to seek help for them.
Okay. And what do you think is like the best approach to kind of handle that? I know that it can be very tricky, right? I can identify some people who have those signs, but I don't want to overstep, right? And I don't want to alarm them. I don't want to scare them. I don't want them to think that I think differently of them. How do you really go about handling that?
I think as a friend, you could say, I'm really concerned about you. You used to hang out with us, and we hardly see you anymore. And when I do see you, you seem sad, or you seem really anxious, and you don't have, whatever it is that you're noticing that's different from how they used to be, that's concerning you, that's what you want to address. And it's like, I don't want to get in your business. I don't want to step over the boundaries of our relationship, but I'm just wanting you to know how concerned I am. And I want you to know that there are people you can talk to other than me, just to bounce things off of and maybe get some help.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And then you kind of touched upon this earlier, or just a few minutes ago. Is there similar treatment for both adults and kids, or does the treatment differ between age groups?
The treatment's not different. It's the approach that's different. So there are evidence-based therapies that are like cognitive behavioral therapy. I'll just use that as an example, and that examines your thoughts and your feelings and your behavior and how those three interact with each other. You can use that with adults, and you can use it with children. But with an adult, you can sit down and say, what did you think? And then how did you feel based on what you thought? And then what did you do based on how you felt? And then you can help them see the connection between how their thoughts and feelings affect how they're behaving. You can't do that with a child, but you can sit with them and you can play a game, and easy is if you play a game and they lose and they get mad. It's like, well, what were you thinking when the game started? Did you think you were going to win? It's like, I thought I was going to win. And when you lost, how did you feel? I felt mad. And as a result of getting mad, what did you do?
Right.
I threw the game, So let's talk about a different way, how your thoughts and feelings affected your behavior that got you in trouble. Let's go through it again and come up with some other strategies to help you calm down so the behavior won't result in you getting in trouble. Things
Yes.
like
So, Dr. Elsie, I just wanted to go back to something earlier. You were talking about the taboos, right? And about that meeting with you guys with a psychotherapist is very confidential, and someone should not be worried about their privacy being violated in terms of information being shared with others. But I think what a lot of people are concerned about, or, at least I've heard from, as they say, the grapevine, is that people get concerned about, if I go see a therapist, what is going to be the diagnosis, and what are they going to require me to do? Like, am I going to be forced to be put into some type of mental institution, or what are articulating some of the treatment plans that people might undergo? What does that look like? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, and that is a real fear, especially in the African American community, because of the history in healthcare, period, not being able to trust, using the Tuskegee experiment as an example, not being able to trust the mental health community. There's a fear that I'm going to be diagnosed with something so severe that they're going to say I need to be hospitalized. Hospitalization usually only occurs if you are a danger to yourself or others. Other than that, whatever we're sitting here talking about will not result in a hospitalization. So if that is the concern, if you come in and you say, you know, I'm going to kill myself, then there's an evaluation done at that point to see how serious that threat should be taken. You know, there are questions that are asked to see if you have a method of doing it. If you have it planned out all the way, then it's like, oh boy, we need to have that person hospitalized. But if you're just saying, you know, I feel so bad, I don't know if I want to live anymore, you won't be hospitalized for that. That will be part of the discourse and the discussion to help you move beyond that. So it's a reasonable fear only if you are going to harm yourself or say that you're going to harm yourself or someone else.
So
let me say, or if you are psychotic and you are a danger to yourself or somebody else.
I have a question about just kind of your personal approach. Like I do have an actual therapist. I've been cheating on you myself. And some of those fears that Tanya pointed out, that was a genuine fear when I initially went down to sit with her, because, you know, sometimes when you talk about the things that are in your mind that you want to get off your chest, you don't know what the reaction may be of the other individual. But what I appreciated about her was she kind of had a conversational approach where we didn't get right into things. It was just literally having a conversation like I would if I were meeting anyone. So do you find that it's being, when you're working with adults, the best kind of approach to just kind of let people come in and just talk and let them guide where things go, or something different?
Well, it depends on how, if they're in a crisis or not, if they feel they're in a crisis or not, or if they have a specific issue that they're coming in about. If they're not sure why they're there, they just know that things haven't been going well and they've been worried a lot or they've been depressed, then you'll have a conversation. And during the course of that conversation, you'll gather information that informs you about a little bit about their life, so that you're getting a little history to help you come up with a treatment plan. So in the first 2 or 3 sessions, that's information gathering, and you do let, and it's different for different therapists. But in some facilities, they require you to ask very specific questions. So,
Right there. I try to get that help.
The joys of life, right?
It's like the last hospital I worked in, we were required to ask like 3 pages of questions in the very first session. So you didn't have an opportunity to sit there and have a conversation. But for me in my private practice, I don't have to do it that way. So I can gather information more slowly as we go along. But by the 3rd session, you want to have enough information so that you can create a treatment plan, so you can let the person know that I think that these are the things that we need to work on, see if they buy into it or not. They may want to add some things to it or take some things away. And then you talk about how long what the treatment will consist of and how long you think it will be. How long it will take to resolve whatever the issue is that you brought to the table. So it's different depending on where the therapist works and what their particular philosophy is.
So with that being said, out of curiosity, especially those of us that are blessed enough to have health insurance and things like that and go and get wellness checkups and annual exams and things like that on a regular basis, is it ever a good recommendation, just like we would go and get a teeth cleaning, or just like we would go and get just a regular wellness check with our primary care, to also think about the mental health as a perspective as well. Like, we don't necessarily have to be having a bout of depression or anxiety or some sort of traumatic event, but to just kind of go and talk to someone and just make sure that everything's okay. Is that anything?
I think that would be fantastic.
Hmm.
I think that would be fantastic. I would definitely be open and would suggest that, and would like to see that normalized across the board, because people, therapy needs to be demystified. It's basically a relationship between you and the person in the room where you are talking, and you don't have to have a mental illness. You just have to have some reason or some issue that you have that's on your mind that you want to discuss with somebody else who's unbiased, who's supportive, and who's empathetic. I mean, it's different. You can go talk to a friend, but your friend is going to be biased, and they're going to say things like, "Girl, you need to drop him. You know, he's no good for you." The therapist do that. They're going to say, "Well, let's talk about this. Let's see, you know, what was your role in whatever this thing was that took place, and, you know, help you see whether whatever he did that your girlfriend said you need to drop him for, whether you had a role in that you need to honor and respect." But it's the only time where you have somebody who's there specifically to talk to you about you and nobody else. That's all this conversation is about.
Listen, we know Rachel loves that part of therapy.
I have a question. Hello?
Go ahead, Misha.
Sorry, I froze for a second, but I have a question. How important is it for your therapist to look like you or be similar to you? Is that something that I should be taking into account for when I'm trying to find a therapist? Should I be looking for someone that's a Black male, or should I be looking for anybody that is, you know, certified in that field?
Well, that's a question that's been studied and continues to be studied, especially related to African Americans. Our culture is so unique. It's different from other Black people, like people who come from from Africa or come from Jamaica. Our culture is starting out as slaves in America. Our life experiences, the things handed down to us, the baggage handed down to us because of that is different from other Blacks even. So you want somebody who's culturally aware, who's sensitive to the fact that if they aren't African Americans, they have educated themselves and they're willing to have a dialogue with you about what your experiences are that they may not have experienced themselves. So it's probably better, it's easier, you relax quicker if you have a therapist that looks like you. But if the therapist isn't trained to help you with the specific issue that you're dealing with, then it's not going to do you any good whether they're looking like you or not. So I would say start with that. But if you can't find someone like that, then you would want to find somebody of another ethnicity that you can have a conversation with before you choose them as your therapist, to see how willing they are to talk about race and the issues that confront you, how much knowledge they have about it, and how open they are to using that as a part of your therapeutic process. I've had men and women. I don't know that the gender matters much, except for if it's an issue related. Well, I don't know. I was going to say except if it's an issue related to men and you feel more comfortable having a man to talk about it with. But sometimes it's better to have the opposite sex so you get a different viewpoint. So, and they can ask you questions that you've maybe never asked yourself, or that a man maybe thought was normal. So he can ask you whether he's a therapist or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So The most important thing about choosing and staying with a therapist, though, is the relationship. So it doesn't matter how well trained the person is. If you go in the room and you're not comfortable with them, they're not the right therapist for you.
That's true. So we have a question from the audience, Dr. Elsie, around budget. So it's said that some people would like to try it, but it's a common belief that it's out of their budget to do so. I know that there are ways that people can fund therapy, and it's not always an out-of-pocket cost. Can you talk a little bit about, the cost structure associated with getting therapy?
Well, you would need to look for agencies that do a sliding fee. There are a number of those out there. So usually, though, when they do that, you will see a therapist in training versus a licensed therapist. But there are some therapists out there who will facilitate a lower rate for you, and they usually advertise that. So you could find that out probably if you Google them and you go to their webpage. If they have one, you can find that out, or call them. If you get a name of somebody and you're interested in following up with them, find out if they have a sliding fee. Or you can go to a community mental health center. They usually have either free or very low rates for people that don't have insurance.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, in insurance, a lot of people, I think, don't even know that their insurance a lot of times covers mental health costs. So you should definitely check into that. And I know in light of, especially now with the pandemic and so much that's going on and people's mental health being taxed, that companies, if you are employed, companies are instituting employee assisted programs, EAPs, to help with mental health. So that's another avenue that people should definitely look into.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that have insurance and you want to see what is offered through your insurance, you can either contact your provider directly, or you can also try sites like ZocDoc, Z as in zebra, OC Doc, and look up providers that are in your area as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we see a lot of like celebrities, right, that we probably believe have mental health issues that for some reason aren't getting diagnosed. But for those who may be very independent and maybe on their own, what advice would you give someone to self-evaluate and determine whether they need mental health treatment or not?
Well, I would ask them to look at whether their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are interfering with their day-to-day life. If they're, low performing at work when they used to be performing well, if they're in constant conflict with other people, if they are eating and sleeping more than usual, like they talk about people gaining the COVID-20 or whatever the number is, it's not just, for some people, it's not just because they're sitting home, it's because they are home and they can't see their family that they're eating and gaining weight. So, things like that. And ask your friends, like you mentioned earlier, if you have close friends whose opinion you trust, you can ask them if they are observing anything about you that you need to pay attention to. And you can also use the free consultation that some therapists offer, where you can call them and kind of talk for about 10 minutes about what you're experiencing and see if they feel therapy would benefit you. But they're probably going to say yes, because therapy can benefit everybody. If you have to ask yourself if I need therapy, you probably need therapy.
Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead, Rach.
I would also want to add, to those of you that you may have certain situations going on and you say to yourself, well, this is something simple, I don't need a therapist for. You could go to a therapist if you've just moved to a new location. That's a new life event. And you're just looking for somebody with an objective opinion to kind of help you get acclimated to your new surroundings and your new area. Or even if you're thinking of changing jobs or switching career industries or anything that could be a big decision that you don't necessarily want to make a rash movement on, you could go to a therapist and just talk to an objective person, like Dr. Elsie said, that can just give you like an unbiased observation about a conversation that they're having with you about that particular topic.
Yeah, and that's a good segue. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Elsie.
I was just going to say, I think it's great that you said that, because the majority of the clients that I've seen over my career have come in for adjustment type issues, where they're adjusting to a change in their life that can be as minor as just moving, or as significant as a divorce or a death in the family, and adjusting to life without that person. So it doesn't have to be a mental illness of depression or anxiety. It just can be life events that are feeling a little overwhelming at a particular point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so all of that's a good segue into our next question, which is, what advice would you give someone that experiences varying levels of anxiety? At what point should they really be thinking about considering the benefit of therapy services? Because, life events, moving somewhere can raise someone's anxiety level, starting a new job, getting in a new relationship, all of these, or a death, all of that causes different levels of anxiety for people differently. So at what point should they really think about therapy services, to your point earlier, Dr. Elsie?
I think that if they have excessive worry that's interfering with their sleep, with their ability to work or do their schoolwork or do their work in a job setting, if they aren't able to handle their activities of daily living for at least more than half of a week, they are feeling this overwhelming anxiety, and it occurs for 6 months or more. And you don't have to wait that long, but usually if it lasts that long without abating, then you really should see a therapist.
Okay.
But anxiety, though, too, can be caused by physical ailments. So seeing a doctor is also recommended, because like thyroid issues can cause you to feel anxiety. If you're ingesting too much caffeine, it can cause you to have anxiety, and certain heart conditions cause you to have anxiety. So you should always focus on your physical health first before you turn to mental health.
Oh, that's a good point. So a real quick comment from the audience. Someone said African Americans are often misdiagnosed with schizophrenia. Why is that?
I think that's a bias. That goes back to the systemic biases that are just inherent in the healthcare system. One of the things that needs to be addressed and worked on over time, is going to take forever to do it, but it's something that African Americans in the mental health field have been addressing in different forms. They always seem to go to the extreme with the diagnosis. I have had a relative that has bipolar disorder, and her first diagnosis was schizophrenia. So you want to diagnose, if you're diagnosing, you want to diagnose as the least severe diagnosis, so you don't stigmatize someone and rule that out before you move up to something as serious as schizophrenia, because a lot of things mimic that. You can have postpartum issues going on after delivering a baby that can mimic schizophrenia. Changes in your hormones. You can have depression, and it gets so debilitating that you can go into a psychosis, and that can be misdiagnosed as schizophrenia. Or some people who smoke marijuana gets a little psychotic, and they have a psychotic episode. They do. So you need to look at all of that, and it's a bias in the certain segment of the mental health population. So
Now, Dr. Elsie, with marijuana being legalized almost across this country, people gonna be thinking they're going crazy everywhere.
That
They're
bad
gonna be,
advertisement.
right? They're gonna be evaluating. That's funny. Okay, so before we wrap up here, just one last question, Dr. Elsie. In your experience, what are the most common illnesses that you as a psychotherapist typically treat?
well, for me, it's typically anxiety disorders, and depression and adjustment disorders. Those are the main ones. But trauma is also a major issue that affects the lives of especially African Americans in the African American community. Just looking at this whole past year with Black Lives Matter and the brutality of the police and people being murdered, it doesn't have to be a direct trauma that you've experienced personally. It's the trauma associated with what you're seeing going on in the world, and in addition to things that might be happening in your home. And also right now with COVID, you have people who are becoming homeless because they don't have jobs now, and that's a trauma. So there are a lot of trauma-related scars that people are carrying around, and they need to be addressed.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you pointed out the fact around the whole Black Lives Matter and all of the civil unrest that we've experienced this year. I don't think that people oftentimes realize or recognize that that trauma, although you're not directly impacted personally, does have an effect on your psyche, right? And you should think about how it's playing into your everyday actions and your thoughts, because some people really struggle with just getting up to do their normal day-to-day job of work. That, and they were not directly impacted personally or even had any direct relationship to any of the Black lives that have been, impacted in America because at the hands of police brutality or other means of death. So it takes a toll, and I think people don't always recognize that. So I'm really glad that you pointed that out for the Black community. Mm-hmm. All right. Do you guys have any other questions, Rachel or Michonne?
No, I think you did really great in explaining that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. This has been a really great talk. And Dr. Elsie, you've provided very much valuable information for our viewers, so we really appreciate it. For those of you seeking help, please be sure to check your insurance company to look for resources close in your area. Or what was the resource you gave earlier, Rachel? I'm going to miss it.
You can also go online and you can check Doc, Z as in zebra, O, C as in cat. That's a way that you could check for any provider across any continuum, but that's a popular one that people often use.
Or contact your local community mental health center, and if they aren't able to take you, they might be able to make referrals for you.
Awesome. Do you want to leave the people with any additional thoughts, Dr. Elsie, before we close out?
Well, I would just like people to be reminded that you don't have to have a serious mental illness in order to benefit from talking with a therapist. And that you should not wait until your issues get really, really debilitating before you choose to do that. If you go earlier than later, then you can kind of stave off anything that might come down the line if you waited too long. Mm-hmm. I would also like to offer to your viewers an opportunity to do an assessment, a very brief assessment. If you have a question, not an assessment, I don't want to call it an assessment. If you have a question that you didn't get to ask today, or you thought about it later and you want to ask it about mental health and treatment and anything of that nature, you can reach me at drelzey@gmail.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Dr. Elsie. For those of you who want to reach out to Dr. Elsie, as she said, drelzey@gmail.com. Before we close out tonight, though, we want to go back to our Black Health Trivia, since we have more viewers on. And we're going to see if we can get somebody to get our answer right. So Our question for Black Health Trivia is, in the African American community, children are less likely diagnosed, evaluated, and treated with this disorder in comparison to white children. Let me drop my music. Don't say anything, Rachel. Oh, wait.
You knew it.
Wait, it might help if I turn the volume up, though. Come on, guys. Somebody knows. Take a guess.
Somebody's Googling it right now. I know it.
They are. We're gonna let it go just a little second longer. Nobody said anything yet. We haven't got the right answer. Let me say that.
I have to admit.
Yeah. It's not that hard though. It's common. All right, it's common. Anybody got any more guesses? We don't have any answers. So we will repost our question later in the week and we'll do a drawing because we had a good guess. Someone said autism. No, that's not it. But we were close though. Close. All righty. So we will come back to that later in the week. You guys tune in, look to our site after you go and Google it and put in an answer and we'll enter everyone in the drawing that gets the correct answer. We have been on a long road to wellness and our journey is almost over. We invite you to join us for our next session, which will be our last show of the season on our healthcare journey, where we will have a panelist of expert guests to discuss the final wrap. Healing, Healthy, and Happiness on Thursday, December 17th at 7 p.m. Eastern. Till next time, this has been YBC Revolt Talk.